Afternoon, folks. How's everybody doing? Just kind of vegetating, playing with the beast. Because if I don't, she lets me know it's time to go play. And, buddy sends me over a link from an article I posted this morning. Goes, did you read this? Tell you the truth, I didn't. I laughed at it when I read it. Put it up on my mind. And, by the end of the day, I tried to get back to read the stuff that's interesting. I just thought this was absolutely insane. Stupid. But then I read it. Oh, was I right? So, this is on the Washington Post, where democracy dies in darkness, so they should fucking know. What's the worst that could happen? The election will likely spark violence and a constitutional crisis. Okay, so the basic premise here is that Rosa Brooks, who is a law professor at Georgetown University and a co-founder of the Transition Integrity Project. Where was she 4 years ago? Just saying. Got together with some people and then they war gamed scenarios. Okay, I don't think these were actual war gamed, and I don't think they were done very well. I really didn't get that far into the article before I broke out laughing and said, why don't we just do a video on this together? We wanted to know what's the worst thing that could happen to our country during the presidential election. President Trump has broken countless norms. Norms according to whom? Just saying. And ignored countless laws. Can I get some proof, please? During his time in office. And while my colleagues and I at the Transition Integrity Project, TIP, gee, I wonder who's funding them, didn't want to lay awake at night contemplating the ways the American experiment could fail, we realized that identifying the most serious risks to our democracy might be the best way to avert a November disaster. So we built a series of war games and sought out some of the most accomplished Republicans, Democrats, civil servants, media experts, pollsters, and strategists around. And we asked them to imagine what they do in a range of election and transition scenarios. I got exactly this far. A landslide for Joe Biden resulted in a relatively orderly transfer of power. Excuse me? It was done right there. See, Rosa, like the rest of these people who apparently never leave their fucking fishbowl, is under the impression that everybody actually thinks Joe Biden is ahead, that Joe Biden is more personable, that Joe Biden has more support, that Joe Biden's the better leader, or whatever kind of delusional shit they have going on. But apparently what they don't think is that those disgusting deplorables from that basket in flyover country are just going to assume that of course it was a fair election, because even though the man has allegedly has early onset dementia or just full-blown Alzheimer's at this point, discounting the amount of dislike for the vice presidential nominee, she's not a particularly well-liked person around the country. Just saying. Those horrible Bible-clutching, gun-toting, miserable excuses for humanity who could never survive in the urbane and polite society, I'm assuming DC here. Well, they're just going to go, oh, darn it. Damn, we're so polite and we lost, so we're just going to accept it and sit on it. You go, no, I don't really think so. Granted, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of incredibly stupid people out there that are now buying weapons up right and left. They've caused a gun buying panic, and good luck getting some fucking ammunition. But the people who aren't going to accept Joe Biden winning in a landslide, mind you, because the devil still hasn't ordered ice skates from the last time I checked. What are they thinking? Every other scenario we looked at involved street-level violence and political crisis. Because we haven't been there for the last 4 months now? Incidentally, I'm pretty sure all those places with street-level violence, those would all be Joe Biden strongholds, no? Throwing it out there. Picture this. On the morning of Election Day, false stories appear online claiming that Biden had been hospitalized with a life-threatening heart attack. No, it would be stroke. He's had multiple brain aneurysms. Why would you go with heart attack? Don't do your research or anything there, Rosa. And the election has been delayed. Every mainstream news organization reports that the rumors are unfounded, but many Biden supporters, confused by the bogus claims, stay home. Many Biden supporters are just confused. They don't need any other claims. If you're supporting Biden, you definitely got some issues. Still, by late that night, most major networks have called the election for Biden. The former vice president has won key states and has a slender lead in the national popular vote. Not that it fucking matters. And polling experts predict that his lead will grow substantially as Western states count an unusually high number of mail-in ballots. The Electoral College looks secure for Biden, too. Don't get me wrong. The only thing this is missing is fairies and unicorns. Yeah, and maybe a fairy godmother on top of it. But Trump refuses to concede, alleging on Twitter that millions of illegal aliens and dead people have voted in large numbers, that the unaccounted ballots are all fake votes. Social media fills with posts from Trump supporters alleging that the election has been stolen in a deep state coup, and Trump-friendly pundits on Fox News and OAN echo the message. You tell me. You fucking tell me. I wonder if they got Bigfoot to write this, because it's out there. Soon, Attorney General William P. Barr opens an investigation into unsubstantiated allegations of massive vote-by-mail fraud and ties between Democratic officials and Antifa in Michigan and Wisconsin, where Biden has won the official vote and Democratic governors have certified slates of pro-Biden electors. The Trump campaign persuades Republican-controlled legislatures to send rival pro-Trump slates to Congress for the Electoral College vote. I have no idea what the fuck that means. On the other hand, it does sound like projection, because this is something they would be more likely to do than Republicans, because while Republican politicians aren't particularly above board, that's where the uniparty exists. So all these people are the same type of gutter level fucking psychopaths. This is definitely more of what you would see on the left side. They tend to be more radical in their actions, more lawless, if you would. The next week is chaotic. A list of Michigan and Wisconsin electors for Biden circulates on right-wing social media, including photos, home addresses, and false claims that scores of them are in the pay of billionaire George Soros or have been linked to child sex trafficking rings. I mean, at least she's projecting exactly what their game plan would be. This is 180 degrees. This is the mirror image of what you would be likely to see. But she wargamed it from her perspective. I get that. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I always try to look at things and say, what would I do? How far would I go? And that's why I evaluate shit like this. And she's doing the same thing. I try to be a little more honest about it, a little more even-handed. I think she is deep in the hole. Massive pro-Biden street protests began. We call those riots, and they involve burning buildings. Demanding that Trump concede, the president tweets that real patriots must show these Antifa terrorists that citizens who love the Second Amendment, because we had to go right to guns, will never let them steal the election. How about people who just love the fucking Constitution? Which Democrats don't, because Democrats believe that they're a democracy. It's Democrat. When everybody who loves the Constitution understands that we're a constitutional republic, because democracy is mob rule, and is no good for fucking anyone. Meanwhile, Trump declares that unless this carnage ends now, he will invoke the Insurrection Act, like he has done so many times before, and send our incredibly powerful military and their ominous weapons into the street to teach these anti-American terrorists a lesson. At the Pentagon, the Joint Chiefs of Staff convene a hurried meeting to discuss the crisis, and it's not even Thanksgiving yet. Broad's out of her fucking mind. That dystopia is based on how events played out in one of our Transition Integrity Project's exercises. We explored the 4 scenario experts considered most likely. A narrow Biden win. Doesn't really look like it from everything I'm seeing. Jesus walked on water though, right? A big Biden win. Yeah, I'm going to go with no. That just does not seem likely at this point, outside of, again, massive voter fraud. A big Biden win with a decisive lead in both the Electoral College and the popular vote. Throw the popular vote away. We're not voting prom queens and kings. The popular vote means nothing in the electoral process. Fucking understand that. A Trump win with an Electoral College lead, but a large popular vote loss. I'm really not seeing that at the moment. I could be wrong. And finally, a period of extended uncertainty, as we saw in the 2000 election, the hanging Chad election. The loser of November's election may not concede. The voters won't either. With the exception of the big Biden win scenario, each of our exercises reached the brink of catastrophe with massive disinformation campaigns, violence in the streets, and a constitutional impasse. Because that always sounds like flyover country in middle America. In 2 scenarios, Trump win and extended uncertainty, there was still no agreement on the winner by Inauguration Day, and no consensus on which candidate should be assumed to have the ability to issue binding commands to the military and receive the nuclear codes. In the narrow Biden win scenario, Trump refuses to leave office and was ultimately escorted out by the Secret Service but only after pardoning himself and his family and burning incriminating documents. What incriminating documents? So we're just going to load shit into the fucking scenario. For obvious reasons, we couldn't ask Trump or Biden or their campaign ads to play themselves in these exercises. So we did the next best thing. We recruited participants with similar backgrounds. Our players included former Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Steele, conservative commentator Bill Kristol, former Kentucky Secretary of State Trey Grayson. On the Democratic side, participants included John Podesta, because he's a fucking sweetheart, that guy, chair of Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign, and a top White House advisor of Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, and a good friend of his brother, who's a good friend of people who like pizza and own islands. Allegedly. Top White House advisor to Bill Clinton and Barack Obama. Donna Brazile. Not like she gave Hillary the fucking answers to the debates or anything. That different Donna Brazile. Jennifer Granholm. Now, I will be perfectly honest, I have no idea outside of Bill Kristol who any of these fucking people are. Saying. But if you're going to war game, you should probably war game, at least on the Trump side, with people who are loyal to Trump. Throw it out there. Otherwise, you wind up with these super slated things. No more my nose. I did it yesterday on video, and it's horribly rude. Give me 1 second. Alright, so we're at 17 minutes, and this will probably run 30, but it's starting to get interesting. Listen to this little fucking tidbit. In each scenario, Team Trump, the players assigned to simulate the Trump campaign and its elected and appointed allies, was ruthless and unconstrained right out of the gate. And Team Biden struggled to get out of reaction mode. Joe's demented. In one exercise, for instance, Team Trump's repeated allegations of fraudulent mail-in ballots led National Guard troops to destroy thousands of ballots in Democrat-leaning zip codes. Now, where have we seen something similar, but the opposite of that? To applause on social media from Trump supporters as opposed to the mainstream media. Over and over, Team Biden urged calm, national unity, and a fair vote count, while Team Trump issued barely disguised calls for violence and intimidation against ballot counting officials and Biden electors. Okay. In every exercise, both teams sought to mobilize their supporters to take to the streets. Team Biden repeatedly called for peaceful protest, while Team Trump encouraged provocateurs to incite violence, then used the resulting chaos to justify sending federalized guard units or active duty military personnel. And here we go with Posse Comitatus, but she's not going to go there. Into American cities to restore order, leading to still more violence. The exercises underscored the tremendous power enjoyed by an incumbent president. Biden can call a news conference, but Trump can call the 82nd Airborne. No, he can't. Literally cannot call up the 82nd Airborne and say, dude, drop on Kenosha, just wipe everybody out. Just get it done. It's a fly in my ointment, it needs to go away. No. Similarly, Team Trump repeatedly attempted to exploit ambiguities and gaps in the legal framework. Where have we heard this one before? There are more than you think. Team Trump repeatedly sought, for instance, to persuade state GOP allies to send rival slates of electors to Congress when the popular vote didn't go its way. pretty sure we actually had somebody on the opposite side using stand-ins because of the corona and they couldn't show up, so they were voting by proxy in Congress. No. With competing slides heading to Washington for the January 6th joint session of Congress that formally counts the electoral votes, Trump supporters argued that Vice President Pence, in his capacity as President of the Senate, had the power to decide which electors to recognize. We haven't seen any of that when they hold these boards in Congress and grill people. Some people ask them real questions, and some people grandstand for 5 minutes. Never letting the witness answer the questions, by the way. Trump's a bad guy. In contrast, the Democrats argued that the House of Representatives had the constitutional authority to choose which electors should be accepted in the event of a deadlock, or, alternatively, the ability to prevent the joint session from taking place at all. We didn't resolve this kind of standoff in our exercises. It's not clear how such a stalemate will be settled in real life. Not very nicely. There's a link in here that I'm going to go to just because my head doesn't hurt enough yet. Trump is wrong. Concession speeches aren't binding at all. That leaves out the fact that you're only as good as your word. So if on election night gave your concession speech, you said, holy shit, it looks like Trump just steamrolled me in the popular vote, because the popular vote matters, and in the Electoral College, even though all the mail-in ballots haven't been counted yet, I concede Trump's the president. Then, if you're a man of your word, you would have given that speech and stood by it. If you're not, why would you give a fucking concession speech in the first place? These people have no honor. You understand that. Honor is one of those things that sociopaths and psychopaths don't have. Narcissists either. They're just incapable. The lack of empathy among those people is something normal people can't figure out. When you ask why Ted Bundy repeatedly raped and murdered girls for shits and giggles, because they're good. Oh, okay. I was just wondering. Can't put themselves in anybody else's shoes. It's about me, and it has to be about me. In the Trump win scenario, desperate Democrats, stunned by yet another election won by the candidate with fewer votes after credible claims of foreign interference and voter suppression. Show me the credible claims. Been 4 years. They should be there somewhere. But they're not. Also sought to send rival slates of electors to Congress. They even floated the idea of encouraging secessionist movements in California and the Pacific Northwest, unless GOP congressional leaders agreed to a series of reforms, including the division of California into 5 smaller states to ensure better Senate representation of its vast population. Has nothing to do with it at all. And statehood for D.C. and Puerto Rico. D.C. should never become a state. D.C. needs to stay exactly the way it is. And as far as Puerto Rico goes, the Puerto Ricans don't want it. They enjoy way too many perks of being a commonwealth. While both parties appealed to the courts as well as to public opinion, the legal experts in our exercises pointed out that the judicial system might well avoid rendering decisions on the central issues, since courts might see them as fundamentally political rather than judicial in nature. Other players noted that there was, in any case, no guarantee that the losing side would accept the ruling from a highly politicized Supreme Court. They're banking on RBG's batteries finally giving out, I guess. But there's some good news. This kind of exercise doesn't predict the future. And how could it predict the future? You so loaded it with bad fucking... Oh my God. This is garbage in, garbage out. This is what happens when you don't do things from a median perspective. Oh, you know what? It's not even rose-colored glasses on these people. These people's heads are so far up their ass, the lenses are shit brown. In fact, wargaming seeks to forecast all things that could go wrong, precisely to prevent them from happening in real life. It's called limiting the Murphy factor if you live in the real world, okay? And if the Transition Integrity Project's exercises highlighted various bleak possibilities, they also suggested some ways we might, as a nation, avoid democratic collapse. Well, okay, number one, let's get the word democracy out of the fucking conversation again. You're not a democracy, you're a constitutional republic. Stop lying to people. Stop playing fucking word games. First and foremost, congressional and state leaders, including legislators, governors, state secretaries of state, and state attorney generals from both parties can commit to protecting the integrity of the electoral process against partisan meddling. No, they can't, because how often are we now seeing that a George Soros-funded AG in, let's just go with the broad from fucking St. Louis, who's about eyebrows deep in shit now when they look at all the money she took from him. More and more of them being turned over every day. You know why? Because outside influence and outside money are exerting their fucking force in our political system. That's wrong. This is why George Soros, who supposedly died 2 years ago, but his children are now using his name as a stalking horse, need to be rolled up and taken in for war crimes. How many people have they killed with these fucking riots? Remember, if you paid for it, you're responsible. You broke it because you bought it. And then the rest of this is just them pointing out how they can stop horrible things like this happening. Literally without saying, Orange Man bad, and we have to do everything we can to stop them. Well, the media can take it. The media also has an important role. Responsible outlets, we know who those are. They're all 3 letters, aren't they? Well, one's 5 letters. Can help educate the public about the possibility, indeed the likelihood, that there won't be a clear winner on election night because an accurate count may take weeks. You see, they're setting you up to get they're setting you up for the new normal. They love that new normal bullshit. Normal is normal. No new normal. Given the large number of mail-in ballots expected in this unprecedented mid-pandemic election. Now, Trump being shitposter-in-chief that he is, and this is why I like this guy. I like this guy for 2 fucking reasons. A, he doesn't blow smoke up my ass like I'm a fucking moron. 8 years of Obama, I got fucking rectal cancer from the amount of smoke he blew up my fucking ass. Do I look like a chimney chief? Ugh. Trump doesn't do this. He literally doesn't. And I have friends who really dislike him because he's not very presidential and he's coarse. And I'm like, and? What's wrong with people telling you the truth instead of blowing smoke up your ass? Just saying. Coarse is my kind of guy. At least he shoots straight. Meanwhile, military and law enforcement leaders can prepare for the possibility that politicians will seek to manipulate or misuse their coercive powers. We politicize the military for specifically that reason. Okay? Think about it. We took the military and we turned them from warriors into fucking politicians. And it's not the benefit of us. It's the benefit of them. Partisans, including Trump, may try to deploy law enforcement, National Guard troops, and potentially active duty military personnel to restore order in a manner that primarily benefits one party, because stopping the burning of cities and the looting and murder, rape, robbery, all the fun stuff that goes with that, that only favors Trump. That only makes Trump look good. The federal response to this summer's protests in D.C.'s Lafayette Square, where they found weapons caches. Remember that? Weapons caches. And they cleared the fucking park. And Portland, Oregon, because there's an example I want to use for anything. Portland, the shining example of calm, peaceful power. suggests that this is not purely speculative. Well, we're at 30, so we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to close it on this. If Portland and Lafayette Square and Kenosha and anywhere else has showed us anything, it's that Trump never deployed any troops because he did the constitutional thing. It's your state. You're the governor. If you want help, we'll give you help. But you have to ask for it. I'm not just going to drop troops on you. Well, he sent people in. That was a federal building they were trying to burn down. It was a $300 million federal courthouse. Yeah, that's federal property. They didn't go out in the streets and start shooting fucking looters, did they? Anyway, folks, I thought it would be interesting for you to see just how diluted, and this came out of the Washington Post, so we knew that the Washington Compost was garbage to begin with. This is an editorial think tank piece for them. This is what they really think. Pay attention. Anyway, I'll catch you folks later. Thanks for popping by. New folks, thanks for signing up. Appreciate you being here. Somebody's at the door. Probably the mailman. I gotta go, so I will catch you later. Stay safe, my friends. Remember, unplug. Get away from all this bullshit once in a while. Take a little quiet time. Just try and recenter yourself, right? Adios.